So again, breakdown, just so you understand why I'm watching Bricky videos. I made a video on YouTube weeks ago, and the point of the video was like, hey, I don't know shit about Warhammer, but I want to know about Warhammer. I need people in the comment section to tell me about Warhammer, or refer to any YouTubers so I can watch to learn about Warhammer. And people in my comments for that video on YouTube said Bricky. They said, hey, there's 3 videos that Bricky has that you should watch, and it'll give you a good bit about a lore on Warhammer Secret. So I don't know anything about Warhammer, so I'm watching and reacting to Bricky videos because I was asked to do a reaction video. I could watch these by myself and not on stream and things like that, but the person asked for it to be a reaction, so I figure why not. You tell me that Bricky's is this great encyclopedia of Warframe and Warhammer, I'll abide to the reaction thingy. I don't really take requests when it comes to reactions, just react to what the fuck I want to react to. So we're on day 2 of watching Bricky. This is the second video. There's one more video to watch from Bricky. We'll watch that tomorrow. Yeah, that's why I'm watching Warhammer videos, to learn about Warhammer and Warhammer new.
Hey all, this is part 2 in a 2-part series on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode. If you already have, go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just felt someone grab my ass.
What?
Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible, there are demons everywhere, things are crazy, all your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty. It is vast and tiny. It obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate in chaos and the warp. These are the 4 major chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change.
That's one ugly motherfucker.
The god of change, it's permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions, and those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions, or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horseshit? Tzeentch is just, I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable. And that's what the god of change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment,
yo, these chaos dudes are fucking hideous.
And death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large bloat and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death. All of us will end up the same way, and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke that Nurgle always loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot, and we all die and wither. That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chonk! Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known
The Desire
as
Demon from Dragon Age?
or the god of unspeakable excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. See, we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done fucked up, but or whatever, is mainly about just the excess of emotions. And therefore, sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain.
Skin crawling, what that looks like.
Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything. Mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear, because it is
Kind of reminds me of freaking Lust from
the Prince of Pleasure.
Dante's Inferno video game.
To the point where it is just sheer frightening.
The
That
boss
is
fight in Dante's
Slaanesh
Inferno, where like
in
this
a
little just
nutshell.
big ass
Bizarre
behemoth
and
of a chick
hard to describe
who
sometimes.
has like
But as we talk
literal
more about
babies
Dark
crawling out of her
Eldar later in
nipples.
this video, you'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or, say, low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally refer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about
he might be a piece of shit who killed things, but he's also honorable. There's honor here.
In the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side.
He's not a good guy,
Him and Zeech
but he's
generally don't
honorable.
get along because Zeech is that conniving schemer, but he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to
Hope kind of goes entwined with that
your fate is
conniving,
stone, but in reality,
Loki-esque personality.
Control whenever you want. The changer of ways. That is Zeech. And of course, Zeech and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality. An ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slanesh embodies happiness. Slanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, you know,
Jingle bells.
what an awkward time for the ad to come up.
Feet were rang, squash.
bam style of pleasure, but also everything else like food.
This does that whenever freaking like there's an ad, it kind of like
air on your
freezes.
cheek and sunlight, the
Like
feeling,
YouTube's
emotion,
ads
and
breaks YouTube
feeling.
videos.
All of that is
They
also
like run
represented
that back a little bit.
that finality, that ability that this
YouTube
is
ads
over.
freeze YouTube.
We are all the same and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slanesh embodies happiness. Slanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, you know, bam style of pleasure, but also everything else like food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented.
Which I will say
with
this,
Slanesh.
mention this character. Warhammer, I mentioned the blue at the beginning of stream. Warhammer seems like it's just a dark, disgusting, depressing universe. Like there's just non-stop death everywhere. It's us all sad. Like it doesn't like there's anything good going on in this universe. So this character who like basically wants everyone to feel emotions, wants everyone to feel happiness and things like that. Like, yes, this person is kind of a demon in a way. They're like I said, they're like a desire demon from Dragon Age. But there's a good side to it where it's like you get to have these pleasurable things that otherwise kind of don't exist in the universe because everything else is just war, and just non-stop death and calamity, and it's just boom. So yeah, that person's that little over-sexualized being of chaos has a purpose.
You have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts, even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining all this together, on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally very melee based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are as they seem. Demons. Nurgle is slow, Khorne is super scary in melee, you've got Tzeentch who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then Slanesh who is all melee, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into.
I was watching a hilarious 60k video on DVD reviews.
Are the Chaos Space Marines. So Horse and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm going to be honest. They look really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down, but you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like. At least on the tabletop, because Emperor's children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve Chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the four. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and are a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terror, terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron, still alive, also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't
There's no more anger to gamers.
so he could be angrier. Angron, fucker's mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking.
There's a lot going on there.
Obviously. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar. Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon. Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. Thousand Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool.
A lot of content. That's kind of like why we're here.
Super heavily psyker and kind of Egyptian theme.
There's so much to Warhammer where you need these kind of videos to make it digestible.
You can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here.
Especially when you don't have like mainstream content like of like Halo-esque or Dragon Age-esque video games to like to get the casual audience in. You also don't have like movies to get people in. For example, I shouldn't say movies. They do have like some anime movies, but they don't have like legit blockbusters.
And we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but
very
so
bright.
Much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so, the requirements to do so, are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So, I promise, we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos.
Who is she?
So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery,
Are these people like the elves of Bricky Warhammer?
ending scale.
My question.
Back in
Are
the
these
day, it
like
was just
the
Khorne's ancient
elven
circle. And the
of
Eldar
Warhammer?
are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively and they became so self-reliant, and
There was a
everything
fight
became so
in the NBA
easy,
today. I'm
there
watching
was
that
no
video
requirement
after this
for
video.
food production anymore. There was no shortages. Everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
These are for the elves of Warhammer. You
When
see their ears.
everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog. I'm good. And
Sex and
failed.
drugs is just kind of what people associate with debauchery. So that's why.
They left
And people think about blah blah blah. People think about debauchery and being a degenerate. They kind of associate sex and drugs with debauchery and being a degenerate.
on these giant continent-sized starships called craft worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, well, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All of this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi-horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh, only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh. craft
Oh,
world
shoulder.
or not? What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar
Dark
population
Elves.
right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently
That looks cool.
trying to get their population up because as they're so
I'm noticeably
constantly
more
being
like
hungry.
into Warhammer's outfits when they don't look super mechanical, which is something I've noticed. When they don't look mechanical as fuck, I am like all in on freaking like Warhammer characters. Dark Elves are more, yes, yeah.
They realize their entire species is doomed, and they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall.
Probably.
Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai.
That's so
and
much.
Though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. Now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast.
Sound like how it's in Elder Scrolls or like Mass Effect, but Elder Scrolls, not everyone can use magic Elder Scrolls, but like elves are more fine-tuned with magic. In Mass Effect, not everyone can use biotics, but like the Asari are more fine-tuned with biotics. So like the Eldar in this kind of context, like everyone has like their own psychers, and like I'm assuming these videos, but the Eldar are like, they're more in tune with psychic abilities, like say like the humans.
Of course, rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception.
Basically, they don't have the numbers that the humans have. They don't have like the pure mechanical willpower in war, essentially, as everyone else does. So you have to like outthink people. They have to be more strategic and better and think smarter about how they approach things. Like it's not just ground things into like the ground, which are like just murder everything, just pulverizing their power. Is more like, we don't have that. We got to be smarter than that. We got to find different ways. Like instead of just going down the middle lane and just punch, let's go underground, go to the right, and come from behind and take out their leader, and then go from there. Instead of just, I'm just gonna kill everything in sight till I get to that leader. So it's like they gotta be more strategic about how they do things, because they don't have what the tech and the willpower and the manpower of like the humans. You might guess just watching these two videos.
Be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world.
They're calling humans monkeys.
Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, exactly what I said.
Look. You gotta stop using bitches. Because Lord Frieza does not give a fuck. Lord Frieza will sit here and call everything a monkey all he wants. Because that's how Lord Frieza does things. Anytime Lord Frieza sees anything that looks like a monkey, he calls it a monkey. You can't go a second without Lord Frieza mentioning the word monkey. Wanna know why? Because Saiyans are monkeys. Saiyans turn into a big ass giant fucking monkey when they see the freaking full moon. So Lord Frieza calls anything that looks like a freaking Saiyan a monkey. It's not racist. Well, technically it is racist because it's calling Saiyans monkeys, but it's not racist in the context of why monkey in real life is considered a monkey. Like, it's considered a racist term. Because, like the old back in the days when it's called black human monkeys. It's not in that context, but the other context of the Saiyans turning into freaking, But yeah, just monkeys. Humans are monkeys. Why humans monkeys? Evolution. We come from the exact same kind of shit as gorillas and chimpanzees, etc., 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 etc. We're primates. So that's why the elves call us monkeys. That's why Lord Frieza calls freaking Saiyans monkeys, because your latest monkeys.
Generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
Oh, damn. She's a hottie.
So those
I like Dark Elves now.
In the webway, in the super deranged.
Pause. Why is every other piece of content when it comes to Dark Elves, they look great, except Elder Scrolls? Dark Elves in every Elder Scrolls game, excluding Elder Scrolls Online, they look great, Elder Scrolls Online. But every Elder Scrolls game, excluding Elder Scrolls Online, Dark Elves look hideous. They look disgusting and unattractive entirely. But in every other form of dark fantasy, and in freaking Elder Scrolls Online, Dark Elves are hot as fuck. How did this happen? Who sat there and decided that Dark Elves should be the hottest of the elves, except Elder Scrolls elves, who all look terrible? Dark Elves, not all elves.
In the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh has them, but it has them on by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k. These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too.
She looks hot as fuck.
They have a lot more
I like her.
Kind of leathery black look to them.
She looks like someone who deserves to be called mommy.
Example. Let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough.
That is rough. Excuse you. We're getting into nitty gritty here. It's about these very, very voluptuous dark elves. You're interrupting me.
Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth.
These guys are rough.
Fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur.
These guys are brutal.
Until you are no longer satisfied.
Goodness.
And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy. A fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing, and you will become a moaning, fleshy.
I'm gonna tell you right now, this is the most brutal shit I've ever heard about a video game franchise. Like, just this one character is more brutal than anything I've ever heard of in Halo, anything I've ever heard of in Mass Effect or Dragon Age and Elder Scrolls. None of those games have a faction of people this brutal. Like, no, they have some brutal races in those games. Not even The Witcher. We just played Witcher before this video, and like nothing in The Witcher is as brutal as these fuckers. This just sounds like holy shit. Like, it sounds like every villain in any other freaking like video game would be like, god damn, that's a lot. Like, if you're a DC fan or a Marvel fan, like even those villains would be like, holy shit. Like, damn, it's a little much there. These fuckers are brutal.
For eternity. And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesha's grip will get harder, and
it's like they gotta be evil pieces of shit so they can survive.
Slaanesha's like, you're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You
like, so it's the way that I take that, listen to that. There can be dark elves in that universe who are like, I don't want to do any of this, but if I don't, I die. So I got to do all this horrible shit so I can survive. And it's like, for survival reasons, like, you know, you want to live, you just gotta do what you gotta do to fucking live. And that point is just like, oh my.
That's
also an interesting spot to like pause on.
They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar and Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed. Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sandra.
Reminds me of a freaking there's an enemy of Lost Ark who's like a clown.
They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to craft worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's the Eldar's laughing god, and these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar these depraved individuals would find funny. And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly.
So like the movie
They're
It would be like a
very
rom-com for them.
bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that black library. And the Harlequins just... They're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote.
They sound useless and like you wouldn't even like play as them if you played the table. Like out of all the factions he talked about in these two videos, these are the ones that sound like the most whatever.
Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side.
Like if they didn't
Eldar
exist, no
mind,
one would care.
All life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma. They following me. These, the bugs.
The bug!
The
Oh,
Tyranids.
Starship Trooper has one
What's actually
rule
a little
about
more
bugs.
fun, a little
Just
more
kill them.
simple than all this crazy
Get rid
Eldar
of all the
shenanigans.
bugs.
Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You wanna know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning, hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y, those Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to me. Maybe. I don't know.
Is that true? Was StarCraft supposed to be freaking 40? Supposed to be Warhammer?
Tyranids are a
Interesting. Yeah, dude, it does, like that character does. I never played StarCraft, but it does look like Space Marine.
These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40k because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the Shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the Hormagons, Termagants, and Gene Stealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio-Titan. The Tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you can plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets. Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets, and they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points. Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying, because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. Well, I mean, as cool as there are, there's some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One-Eye. You can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little more complex, talk gene stealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene stealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these brood lords, and I think they're called patriarchs, all can turn an entire world all based into gene stealers. And these are called gene stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants to the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale, and all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineer monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids, they're cool. But are they as cool as the orcs?
Every screen's gone red.
Go. It works.
I'm super fast.
Orcs, 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 orcs. I fucking love orcs. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40K. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he the biggest orc. He big orc knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs. And then you can't fight because orc dead. And orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs, they scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works. The power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them think they goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You want to know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Krorks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard, and it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more. Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together. That makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think it works, because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because
You just accept what was going to happen.
you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything, from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high.
There's like a lot of fun factors to like the idea of how the orcs work in Warhammer. Because I can see why people find that like the failure of playing orc is hilarious.
That's what happens when you play orc.
That's what draws them. They find it funny.
That's why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're gonna have fun and you want to be stupid and you want to be silly, you're gonna play some damn orcs. But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons.
He's like, is it what the Tryhards play?
The Necrons are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron, Necron tier. So the Necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, but because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality.
This universe sounds depressing.
They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and just stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these
I know one of those.
strong, pretty much omnipotent beings. And they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really. They were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them, kind of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality.
That shit big personal.
This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war. Because during this war in heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These Star Gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes, and in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them
to make a pact with the devil. Just feel it coming.
Immortality upon them. But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons
saw it coming.
Dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh
sold their soul to the devil,
them replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons. As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then, with their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The Old Ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orcs, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the Old Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full-on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences. Doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're going to eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orcs actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these Catan and they blasted them. Because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Krorks. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully.
Need to charge me phone.
And some dingus Adeptus Mechanicus guy diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back, and they see all these primitive races on their lawns, and they think, get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, at tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a wonderful Dawn of War game. Lucky creatures, as long last you have.
They sound like something. They sound pretty cool.
I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brother
my ankle.
for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trey's in the Infinite especially. A little dickhead. But speaking of dickheads, last race. Let's talk the Tau.
We made a fucking Wookiee.
The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, eh, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their
That kind
idea
of sounds like
fundamental
the
increase
Prometheans.
and help of
Against
all.
the Protheans in Mass Effect. In Mass Effect, the Prothean Empire basically assimilated every other like empire and race in the universe of Mass Effect. So it's like they saw themselves as like, look, we're the apex predator here. You either can join the Prothean Empire or you could die. So like humans were part of the Prothean Empire technically, and so was the Asari and the Solarians. Like everyone's a part of the Prothean Empire. And if you didn't like agree to join them, they just kill you off. And under their empire, there was peace, and air quotes, some freaking peace, and they were just the smartest and best at everything, and they were insane as fuck. Everything is cool. Then the Reapers came, and well, the rest is history.
In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the Ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail.
Like Kirby will freaking love this freaking group.
And burst cannons.
I'm surprised. My angst in the group chat. It's like Kirby thinking of the Tau freaking
generally what the
Warhammer.
Tau's all about. But
I call him his favorite.
probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very grim, dark Warhammer. And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim, dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer,
It's a little weird. They don't see that's what they fit in this
the
universe.
Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well.
That's like that. Like, that's what I'm saying.
That super dark, dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at ranged combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million
Probably
rules to make
are
it so
born
that it's nearly
to play
impossible
as
for
or born to
you
play against.
to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun
Which can
to
get
gun.
pretty boring.
And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons.
So that's my friend. He likes the Tau. He said yes.
But this is actually
Kinda
one of the
fake.
things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time. It's what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting. Every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, if there's anything you could take away, is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much.
It's deep as fuck, tell you that much.
So much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done. You can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative to you. If you'd like to see more of me, Bricky, you have twitch.tv/Bricky for my streams. You have my merchandise site, in which I was wearing all of my merch, but underneath this, because I had to wear this so it wasn't black or white for the green screen, which is a little unfortunate, but it's fine. If you'd like to see merch, it is in the description. Also, if you'd like to support me on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Bricky for more videos like this, then that would also be wonderful. So Twitch, merch, Patreon, anything if you want to support,
Alright.
that would be fantastic.
That was another good video. I definitely do like the person who recommended me to watch this video is
I'd appreciate it. If not,
you did a good job, because like he's definitely great at explaining Warhammer and great at making someone like me who doesn't know fuck about Warhammer interested in Warhammer. Like this all seems cool and intriguing. It makes me even more and more want to be mentally invested in Warhammer. Makes me even more interested in playing the Warhammer games and being like capable of like understanding this game's universe. Because again, some game universes are so convoluted and are so deep and have so much stuff and content where it's like you have to watch lore videos and videos like these to understand all of it enough to be interested in the content, because otherwise you just kind of feel like everything's moving around at you at a million miles per hour, and you can't really like grab onto it because it doesn't make any sense to you. Again, if you take someone who doesn't play Halo and just go bloop right into freaking Halo Infinite, they'd be like, what the fuck is going on here? You take someone who doesn't play freaking Souls games and go bloop into Dark Souls 3, they're like, what is this? You take someone, go bloop into Mass Effect 3, huh? You take someone, bloop, Dragon Age Inquisition. You get the gist here. It's like, so you have to have some form of understanding. Now the difference between like those games and Warhammer is, with those games there is Dragon Age 2, there's Dragon Age 1. You can go play those games and now you understand Dragon Age Inquisition. Warhammer doesn't really have that. Same thing comes like Resident Evil. You can't like be like, okay, go play all the games and now you understand Resident Evil. It's like, no, there's also these animated movies, you know? So like Warhammer is like, sure, there's games, but not all of those games are intriguing for you to want to play. Like if that's RTS games, you're not giving a fuck about playing Warhammer games because you don't care about RTS games. Like, so you got these like offshoot shooters like freaking Space Marines and Hired Gun, and then you got like the new Space Marines coming out next year. You have like the Dark Tide and Vermintide. So like you have all these like easier to play, easy to digest games, but then there's still just like that other stuff that's like just banging at the freaking door that you want to know about, but you don't want to play those games because they're all old and maybe you don't like vintage stuff, etc, etc, etc. So like it's these videos, guys like Bricky and the other person who I was told to like watch, they get it done. They get it done. So like that video because it was a good video. I did learn a lot, and there is one more video for me to watch and watch that tomorrow stream though. So shout out to Bricky, shout out to the person who recommended I watch his content, because it is some good content, and it does further make me invested mentally in Warhammer. Like, the more I hear about Warhammer stuff, the more I want to play Warhammer, like, just outright. Like, I'm becoming a fucking Warhammer fanboy in 2 videos, so it must be freaking good if 2 videos got me ready to be a fanboy of this damn freaking franchise.